I've had a very productive series of meetings today with President Rajapaksa, with Foreign Minister Perez, with members of the business community, members of civil society, and members of the opposition as well. The U.S. has been a longtime friend of Sri Lanka, and we want to try to build on that friendship. The U.S. welcomed the defeat of the LTTE last year, and now with President Rajapaksa's impressive victory in the recent presidential elections and his party's equally strong showing in the parliamentary election, we think Sri Lanka has a unique opportunity to forge a lasting peace and prosperity after decades of war. Achieving reconciliation will be a key element in peace. One part of achieving reconciliation will be to finish resettling all internally displaced persons as soon as possible. The United States continues to be a leading donor in providing humanitarian aid for all of the internally displaced persons. We are also supporting demining. We are initiating programs to provide jobs to returning IDPs, and we are catalyzing new private sector investments in the north to provide economic opportunities for those IDPs who are returning. We have provided a total of $140 million in assistance over the last 2 years. Another key part of reconciliation will be to assure accountability to redress past wrongs. Secretary Clinton told Foreign Minister Perez in May that Sri Lanka's lessons learned and reconciliation commission holds promise, and we hope and expect that it will fulfill that promise. The last pillar of reconciliation will be to advance democracy and human rights. Minister Perez affirmed during his visit to Washington that Sri Lanka wants to revive and strengthen its institutions of democracy. Progress in implementing greater power sharing with the provinces, implementing the 17th Amendment to empower independent commissions such as the Human Rights, Police, and Bribery Commissions, and efforts to safeguard media freedom will all be important steps in ensuring a future of hope, peace, and prosperity for all Sri Lankans. The United States will continue to be Sri Lanka's partner in all of these endeavors. Well, let me say first of all that I was pleased to see that the UN Resident Representative EOPNA has returned to Sri Lanka, and I think that that bodes well for both sides to try to reduce the tensions that resulted as a result of the crisis that you mentioned. I think it's in everybody's interest now to try to work together. The United States believes that the UN panel that was appointed by UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon can play an important advisory role with Sri Lanka's commission that's been set up. I think it's important to note that the panel that the UN Secretary General has appointed is only an advisory panel for the UN Secretary General. It does not have an investigatory or judicial role of any kind. So again, we think that the UN has great experience in many parts of the world with such commissions, and that experience could benefit Sri Lanka's own commission. We talked a lot about human rights and democracy. I think a particularly important priority right now is on the media side to improve media freedom, but there are many other issues that we've talked about many times in the past, and I refer you to the human rights report that we put out every year, which has a quite complete accounting of some of the concerns that we have. Well, first of all, the United States doesn't tell Sri Lanka to do anything, but let me say that I think there was some misunderstanding here about what the role of the UN panel was. As I said earlier, the the Secretary General appointed the UN panel to advise him, to advise the Secretary General about what might be done to help the commission that is formed by Sri Lanka. And the experts that have been appointed to the Secretary General's panel have a great deal of experience that I think would benefit Sri Lanka's own commission here. And so I think that, again, I think both sides, both the UN and Sri Lanka, are now trying to narrow their differences and get things back to normal, and that's certainly something we will. We did discuss the process of greater power sharing. The President understands the need for that, and so I think he wants to move forward with that. As you know, he's already talked about implementing the 13th Amendment. He's talked about creating a second chamber, and I think both of those would be welcome. And I encourage the President and Foreign Minister Affairs to work closely with the representatives of the Tamil people in particular, because it's important that there be a good dialogue in that respect, and that there be a compromise about what would constitute effective delegated power. I think that there still needs to be steps to do more to encourage greater reconciliation, greater democracy, and again, if those steps are taken, Sri Lanka really has a unique opportunity to reestablish hope and opportunity for all of the people in Sri Lanka. So the United States very much wants to work with our friends in the Sri Lankan government and all Sri Lankans to help achieve that objective. I think it's important to make a distinction between the U.S. GSP process and that has been undertaken by the EU. Ours is a much narrower process. In the United States, anybody can bring a petition to ask that we review any country's status under the GSP. In this case, the AFL-CIO brought a complaint against Sri Lanka and asked that we look at labor rights here. And so we have initiated a process to do so. But I must be clear that while that process is underway, that the GSP will remain in effect for Sri Lanka. And I must also emphasize that this will be a collaborative process, that we will be working very closely with the government of Sri Lanka and listening carefully to what they have to say about whatever questions have been raised. And we will also make sure that our decision makers have the opportunity to visit a wide range of businesses here in Sri Lanka, so they have a chance to see firsthand how labor rights are observed here in Sri Lanka.